I mean, it's appalling what happened in Southport and the evil, cowardly acts of that man. The impact will be felt forever by those families, and it's right that there's now a public inquiry to establish what on earth went wrong. The man was referred 3 times to prevent. He'd been found carrying a knife on multiple occasions, and he'd attacked a boy he was at school with, and yet he was able to slip through the system. And so it is absolutely essential that we learn lessons, not just to provide some sort of understanding for the families of who've lost their loved ones, but also to stop anything like this ever happening again. And no stone should be left unturned in that inquiry. So I think it's really important that when a government speaks, when ministers speak about something before there's been a trial, that people are very careful about the words that they use, because if a government of any colour did anything to prejudice a trial, then that minister would never be forgiven. And so ministers do have to use words with caution. I think part of what this public inquiry needs to establish is when Prevent look at things, what they regard as terror, because my understanding of this case is because they didn't think that the killer had an ideology, that therefore he wasn't at risk in the same way that somebody who might have an ideological motive might. But just because you don't have an ideological motive doesn't mean that you can't be a mass killer and incredibly dangerous.
Rachel Reeves was the guest on Sky News, and she was a series of questions with regard to different things. One subject that has dominated the headlines this week is the Southport attack after Axel Rudak Cabana was sentenced. The British public have not yet received the answers to their question. So ultimately this one of the first movements we were going to hear a Labour politician speak about it. In today's video we will watch and react to Rachel Reeves as she speaks about the incident and other things. Not only that, but we will also go over all of the latest news from across the country. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and join our fast-growing community. Just a quick one to say, we do have new One Care t-shirts available on our website. Go to British.com or check the link in the description. So have a watch. As the Chancellor said, the anti-terror prevent program needs to look at what it counts as terror, as the Southport killer had no obvious ideology. I mean, it's appalling what happened in Southport and the evil count ly acts of that man. The impact would be felt forever by those families. And it's right that there's now a public inquiry to establish what on earth went wrong. That the man was referred 3 times to prevent. He'd been found carrying a knife on multiple occasions, and he'd attacked a boy he was at school with, and yet he was able to slip through the system. And so it is absolutely essential that we learn lessons, not just to provide some sort of understanding for the families of who've lost their loved ones, but also to stop anything like this ever happening again. And no stone should be left unturned in that inquiry. So I think it's really important that when a government speaks, when ministers speak about something before there's been a trial, that people are very careful about the words that they use, because if a government of any color did anything to prejudice a trial, then that minister would never be forgiven. And so ministers do have to use words with caution. I think part of what this public inquiry needs to establish is when Prevent look at things, what they regard as terror, because my understanding of this case is because they didn't think that the killer had an ideology, that therefore he wasn't risking the same way that somebody who might have an ideological motive but just because you don't have an ideological motive doesn't mean that you can't be a mass killer and incredibly dangerous. This is how people reacted to this. Even said, that's obviously a blatant lie. No surprise from Lure. Of course, Larry said, I'd say she's malfunctioning, but I don't think she was wired up correctly in the first place. This user said, you do not need an ideology to inflict terror. Moonite said her party leader has been a champion for not deporting these kinds of people for decades. There is also reports he helped keep the killer's dad here and changed their names. If this is true, Southpaw has the highest level of government at fault, and we were lied to by them. This user said, pity you seem to be unaware that the CPS definition of terrorism includes. It is important to note that in order to be convicted of a terrorism offense, a person doesn't actually have to commit what could be considered a terrorist attack. Planning, assisting, and even collecting information on how to commit terrorist acts are all crimes under British terrorism legislation. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. In other news, Donald Trump's allies have urged him to block secure Stam's deal amid fears that Iran will have more access to spy on the U.S. Top Republicans have called on Trump to send the deal to the shredder for good before his first phone call as president with Starma, this comes after Mayes held discussions with Taiwan on hosting Iranian universities, which security experts worry could be used to spy on the Diego Garcia military base. Iran has been accused before of using exchange programs to spy on Germany, Sweden, and the U.S. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy raised concerns over Iran's move to strengthen ties with Mauritius in a piece for The Telegraph, claiming that giving away the Chagos Islands in danger is UK and U.S. security. He wrote, "If Mauritius is growing its friendships with China and Iran, how can we expect it to keep our adversaries' spies away from our base? It's hard to believe that China and Iran aren't trying to pull Mauritius into their axis and away from the West." Kennedy hit out at Starma, claiming that friends don't strike deals behind each other's backs, more so when our shared security is on the line. Jim Risch, the Republican chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, also told the publication he still held concerns about the deal, but indicated that Trump would block it. "Fortunately, I know that President Trump understands that China presents a tremendous threat to America, and he knows that to protect our national security now is the time to support a strong American and allied presence in the Indian and Pacific Oceans," he said. Risch is one of the closest Republicans to Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and his intervention will come as a major blow to Downing Street, as it shows Labor's effort to get Republicans on board has failed. It is understood that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Elon Musk, and other top figures in Trump's team are privately opposed to the deal. Kennedy confirmed that Trump would always put America's interests ahead of any fears of embarrassing. Number 10. The UK is our ally, and Mauritius is our friend, but this is a matter of national security for the U.S. He said anyone who expects the Trump administration to put the sensitivities of militants above the best interests of America and our allies is writing a check that can't be cashed. He added that everyone would be safer if the Chagos agreement found its way into the shredder for good. Under the proposed deal, the UK would hand over control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, including Diego Garcia, which is home to a U.S. military base, which the UK would then lease back for 100 years at a cost of $9 billion. Critics have continuously pointed to the security risks associated with the agreement due to Mauritius's close ties with China and Iran. However, Labour has argued that surrendering the islands is the only way to follow international law and guarantee the security of Diego Garcia. In 2021, the International Court of Justice issued an advisory rejecting UK sovereignty over the islands, saying they should be handed to Mauritius. Sources have told The Telegraph that it is expected Trump will veto the deal as soon as next week. One source said there was a feeling of betrayal among those close to Trump at Starmer's attempt to rush the deal while Biden was still president. It is also understood that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who is close to Trump, has also been lobbying senior Republicans to oppose the deal. Former head of MI6 Sir Richard Deere said Iran would use academic exchanges as a cover to send spies to the archipelago. It immediately raises alarm belt. I would have thought, as far as the White House is concerned, that will persuade them not to sign the deal off. It's appalling," he said. Iran's ambassador for the region visited Mauritius on Friday to discuss collaboration between the two nations. A statement issued by the Mayan government said that TAN had submitted a draft pact on a deal for the exchange of academics, and that Dr. Kaveh Shamasan, the Mayan education minister, rejoiced at this potential new avenue of collaboration. MI5 warned last year that foreign countries were using British universities for espionage operations. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. I want to quickly say thank you for all the recent support on the channel. We are growing really fast and are now getting closer to our goal of 200,000 subscribers. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.